U.S. alliance. And America and the world needs to understand there's a new international system forming. The old one fell, and we better decide what this new system's going to look like.
¿Qué lo matas?
Because that's the way it is.
So think about how you'll feel when you achieve your biggest goals of all, whether it's starting a business, paying off your mortgage, sending your kids to college, not having to pay for it. You'll be pretty proud when you've met these essential life goals, and you should be proud. All of us already do that. But what do you do next? So getting to the goals is one thing, but protecting them is an entirely different thing and maybe a bigger thing. And this is where life insurance from Policy Genius comes in. Now, Policy Genius makes finding and buying life insurance really easy. You probably want life insurance, but it's expensive. How do you get it? Policy Genius makes it simple. When it means your family has the safety net, it means to cover expenses and to face the future. Nearly half of Americans look back and wish they'd gotten life insurance earlier. It can change everything if you have it, because you don't know the future is, honestly. So with Policy Genius, you can find policies starting at $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. And some options are 100% online. And that means no unnecessary medical exams or review, which is a win. You compare quotes from top insurers side by side. You talk to licensed agents. You secure your families to tomorrow with peace of mind today. And it makes it super easy on Policy Genius. It's all transparent. You know exactly what you get. So you head to policygenius.com/Tucker. Click the link in the description to the free quote. That's policygenius.com/Tucker.
Yeah, and you hope that the questions like that are almost never resolved without computers. If the computer examples within any industry where they, sort of evolve gracefully, it's a lot of people die. And that's, the point. Rome calls in the 5th century the new system, or whatever. And I really hope that we can escape that, and I would opposed to violence like war, so we shall be working towards that. But it's the big things that matter when you have the rise of the East. And that's the main factor that we live in, is that the West is falling. I think it's been undermined completely by people like Larry Fink and many, many others. And but it's being replaced by this threat from the East. And I don't hate the Chinese at all. I think they take their best interest. They're not Christian. They hate Christianity. So they've got a totally different worldview. And I'm not mad at them about it. But I think we should be honest about this, right? We're not going to have, the United States and Russia and Iran and Malaysia, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, China is all sort of acting in their own spheres. That's not the way it works.
And as you said last night, all these countries want to be on Team America. And the people that don't know that, I'm surprised that Trump doesn't understand the unity, but this seems to be everywhere. The globalists went in the 80s, 90s. They made a deal with Communist China. You get the manufacturing Europe and all. But you don't expand your military into the South China Sea. Well, they started 20 years ago expanding everywhere. And it took Obama until about 14 years ago to figure that out. Because the Asians that infiltrated Congress. They were financing all this destroy America and bragging about it. And then people like Bill Gates and others continue to be totally aligned with China.
No, it's right.
And the CFR saying America's over, and Larry Fink making jokes about it just 3 or 4 years ago. Ha ha ha, 5 years ago, Trump thinks he'll bring America back. Ha ha, he hasn't seen China. I mean, very arrogant. And now that China's even double-crossing the globalists and saying we don't even need you, Xi Jinping's like, we're going to pay people to have kids. We're not doing your one-child policy anymore. They're breaking with the transhumanist, angle, but using the control grid, the cashless society, social credit score that the West helped them set up to now project that around the world. And so the globalists are being destroyed by their own Frankenstein monster. And then the EU's decided to ally with China. And again, the UK is at least on the surface acting like, no, they want to be in a new Anglophile alliance with the quote U.S. empire. And again, the U.S. has a limited window to get everybody on board with us, and then our alliance easily with the key countries in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, central among it, and some other alliances, and then obviously an open economic alliance with Russia, who wants an economic alliance and has more resources than any country in the world. I mean, that is the real chessboard, and that's why the left, the globalists, want to drive America apart. Traffic things, and also also militarily, and then also scientifically, and then just raw material. That is the obvious.
If you believe Russia's their greatest enemy, if you are working full time to divide the United States from Russia, you are acting against the interests of the United States. You hate the United States, you hate the West, you want to see it fall. They hate Russia because it's a white Christian country. It's a fact. Why Russia? In all of this, once you take 3 steps back, makes perfect sense. Like, we have a lot of people in the country working actively for the destruction of the West, Russian civilization. So that's just a fact.
This stands in the way.
Sorry, they don't. People don't like it when you say that, but they don't like it when you say it because it's absolutely true. And the farther you get from the United States, that's one of the great benefits of travel. The more obvious it is. Like, you don't know you're married to an alcoholic until you go on vacation without that person. You're like, oh shit, I'm married to an alcoholic. Like, you can't see any of this when you're in the middle of it, but when you leave, it's like, oh my gosh. So, okay, I just want to go back a step. So you have made reference a couple of times to the rise in violence, the acceptance of violence, which is, of course, the purest distillation of evil, in my opinion. Most obvious, for sure. And there are signs that it's, we're entering a violent stage. I pray that we're not, but it feels like we are. We just had a long time before the assassination. If that's what you want to talk about that. What was that? It's a matter of...
Well, a month ago, Jamie White, great reporter, great guy. We worked up there Sunday night till about 9 o'clock. I left. He went home and then got shot with a carotid artery. One shot through his neck. And down at the back, he was bled to death. By the time we got to the hospital, about 15 minutes later, the police got there very quick.
How old was he?
He was 36. And he was on the Ukraine hit list, along with myself, and you, and a bunch of other people, and everybody getting the SWAT called, SWAT teams of their houses and their families has been on that list as well.
Just basically everyone.
Yes. And then, of course, Ukraine tortured American journalist Gonzalo Lira to death. We celebrated that. And so, and of course, we have the would-be assassin down in Mar-a-Lago. Was a big leftist, objected all these intelligence agencies recruiting hundreds of fighters from Ukraine. An American, then he comes back and they try to kill Trump. So I think, you've seen Alexander Dugin's daughter blown up in front of him in 2022.
In Moscow by the Ukrainians. Murdering a guy's daughter, applauded by Anna Applebaum and all the rest of the news in the United States effectively. Because they don't like Alexander Dugin's ideas, so it's okay to murder his daughter.
Well, that's the news. That's
clearly the help of U.S. intelligence about it, right? CIA.
Absolutely. I said 3+ years ago when the war started, I said the U.S. is running all the targeting for the weapons. That's just a fact. And with their soldiers on the ground, I know people, the sons are there. It all started with those nervous. They didn't even tell our sons were there. Special operations. And there's been a lot of
U.S. military personnel fighting.
Memory.
Absolutely. I'm on record 3 years ago saying that, and then 2 weeks ago, New York Times, the U.S. has been running the war, and been there the whole time, and get a Pulitzer Prize. So that was all known. And so now Trump is trying to rightfully end it. People that don't know, I know your audience knows, but we have Victoria Nuland, we have Soros, back when he can still talk, on Fareed Zakaria on CNN saying, oh yeah, we went there with State Department money and overthrew their government 15 years ago. We did it again, and we're finally going to break up Russia, and I'm going to be the czar of Russia. 5 weeks ago, they had the deputy head of the Election Commission say, oh, we're going to keep this war going for decades. We're going to bankrupt Russia. We're going to break Russia in 5 parts. So they're on the news saying, we want peace, we want love. Oh no, Ukraine will never join NATO, which is why Putin went in. The weapons been brought in on the border, and then separately, there's always no, I join NATO. And so, again, the West started this war. Imagine in Russia.
I'm aware.
I know you know more better than anybody, brother. No, it's just has a circle. Any American journalist, you've been everywhere. And it's just, we're starting to fight. It's crazy. We're dragging us into what's really already World War III conventionally, that every escalation moves us closer to nuclear war. The doomsday clock is the closest ever been. And so this is really fundamental. And so any concern I have about being sued or lawfare or attacked doesn't even hit my psychological, spiritual, mental radar, because the big threat is so big of what these megalomaniacs are doing.
So one thing one fact I don't think has penetrated the brains of policymakers in Washington is that we just lost the war. The U.S. was running the war. The U.S. military, the Pentagon, State Department, CIA, running the war against Russia. It was never about Ukraine. No one in Washington cares about Ukraine or the hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian men destroyed. The fact that it'll be populated by third worlders. I mean, Ukraine, we just eliminated Ukraine. Nobody cares. This was a war against Russia, to beat Russia, for there's spiritual. But we lost. And my concern is because nobody will say that out loud, that we're overstating our power. And in the same way that you sometimes see, like, divorced 60-year-old guys hitting on young women and don't realize that the young women think this is, like, absurd. You're like an old man. Why? I really think the 60-year-old guy hasn't readjusted to the reality of his present condition. He still thinks he's 25. Do you see what I'm saying? And he humiliates himself. That can happen at the level of nations, where, you think you can affect outcomes that you actually don't have the power to bring about. And so that's called hubris, and that's how empires get destroyed and populations.
Che, esa corona que te quedaron.
Be afraid of that. Like, why can't we should know that we were not able to win a conventional war against Russia. Period. So, like, what does that say about our power? Maybe we should readjust our expectations a little bit. I don't want that to be true, by the way. I'm American. I'm not leaving. My family's buried here, but, like, don't you think that we run the risk of thinking we're capable of things that we're not capable of doing?
Well, as an example, Hillary had a lot of fraud baked in, but Trump won in such a landslide, he beat her. And then a lot of Republicans and conservatives and populists thought Trump was going to win for sure, so we didn't have as big a turnout, so they were able to steal 2020. But there was such a giant landslide this time, it overrode the mail-in ballots, the dead people, the illegal aliens voting, all of that. They ran out of bullets. But that's a perfect example of how the Democrats were sure they were going to win in November last year. And they were sure they were going to win in November in 2016, and they didn't. So they had this incredible hubris and this incredible arrogance. And so many of them are actually militarily ignorant themselves. They just put on this big imperious act. And of course, there's the clip of Sean Penn saying, well, I don't think nuclear weapons should be off the table. We shouldn't be afraid to use them because that gives Russia an advantage. Well, it's called mutually assured destruction for a reason, because anybody that uses them is insane.
Well, they got in the middle of the war. This just came out the other day. The Pentagon wrote an assessment saying that they calculated that if we gave weapons to Ukraine that allowed the Ukrainian military or our military using Ukraine as a proxy to hit targets within Russia, they judged the likelihood of a nuclear exchange at 50%. And they did it anyway. At that point, like, you should be in prison for the criminally insane.
Well, that's right. If Russia moved...
You're risking nuclear war? Like, you should be locked up? I don't understand. Like, I couldn't even believe that. I mean, of course, intuitively knew that.
And say that again, it's not interrupted. That's important to sink in.
That the Pentagon under Joe Biden assessed, like, because they assess the likelihood of everything, or they guess, they sort of work out how they think things will progress. But in every scenario globally, they do this. This is what they do at the Pentagon. And they assess that if we gave certain weapons that allowed the Ukrainians to strike targets within Russia, if we did that, which we did, the chance of a nuclear exchange, nuclear holocaust that killed everybody on Earth, would be 50%. And they did it anyway. So imagine the brain, imagine the evil. Like, you would have to be controlled by, like, supernatural forces to do something. I think there's a 50% chance every person on Earth could be killed in a nuclear exchange, but I'm doing it anyway. Like, how are you still walking free? I'm serious.
No, and I'm glad you brought that assessment up, because I really tried to get people to focus on that, and I agree with that assessment. I mean, let's boil that down. Imagine if Russia had the equivalent of attackers and storm shadows in Canada, in Mexico, on our border, that they can fire above the trees, that can't be shot down, that are nuclear capable. And Putin said this. He said, if you shoot a few missiles once it started, we'll just shoot them down. But if we see a large aerospace attack with a whole bunch of these, we have to believe it is a first strike to take out our nuclear deterrent. And so when we see a large signature of a large aerospace attack, be it cruise missiles, be it glide bombs, be it a mix of aircraft, or all of them, we will do a total commitment. And then Russian TV said, here's the government scenario, and it showed nukes hitting all the NATO countries. and submarines hitting on from there. And we're talking about world destroyed in 30 minutes, folks, for sure. Submarines off our coast, 2 minutes, New York's gone. 5 minutes, Dallas is gone. This is real. What would happen if Russia was bombing D.C. with conventional bombs, with large, heavy cruise missiles?
They're droning the capital. As the U.S. did through the Ukrainians, they droned the Kremlin.
You were there once when you saw it blow up?
Driving by. I was over there last winter. Driving by the Kremlin, just like on the street in downtown Moscow, smoke coming out of the top of the Kremlin. And so I called the guy, the press officer that's dealing with it, because they're doing it from the vehicle. I was like, "Is your Kremlin's on fire?" Oh, no. I'm right there. Russians never will admit that they have been unable to defend their capital city. So a lot of murder has taken place by the Ukrainians of Russians. Attempted murder of Americans, by the way.
And just think about the provocation.
And with the Russians, in every case, like, that's what's happening. They don't want to admit it because for a bunch of reasons. That's the course of months. But anyway, I called them. But it did happen. I saw it. I personally saw it. So, there's been a ton of that stuff. What would we do if the Russians droned the U.S. Capitol with the HIMARS? It's so freaking crazy.
Well, Russia knows it's a provocation. Globalists want to reset. Financial system's going down. And they're willing to roll the dice. And they think a nuclear war is survivable, as you know, as the Pentagon has said. So it's complete madness.
Nuclear war is not survivable. That's a fact. By the way, nuclear weapon explodes over a nuclear power plant. What happens? I don't know.
Massive meltdown that makes Fukushima look like that.
We have a lot of nuclear power plants around the world. So
there's over 450 that are big industrial, thousands of small ones. And when society breaks down, they all melt down in different ways, much worse than Fukushima and Chernobyl combined. It makes the whole surface of the Earth that is mainline science unlivable for hundreds of millions of years.
I agree. And I know everyone's for nuclear power, and it's obvious we need nuclear power. Okay, I'm not against nuclear power in theory, but until someone can answer the question that you just posed, what about that? Then
plus, they're never run right. They always have scenarios where they're not going to leak. Basically, they all leak.
You see all these stupid concerns, the answer is nuclear. You want more AI data centers, which I don't.
The answer is coal.
Obviously, but I don't understand why everyone. This is just sidebar. I'll stop in one sentence. But those of us who grew up in the 70s and 80s remember that all the opponents of nuclear power were furry-armpit dumb people, and all the Greenpeace answers. Shut up. Nuclear is obviously the solution. You just don't understand science. How can you be against climate change and also against nuclear power? I've said that myself 100 times on TV. But it's not about the spent fuel rods. What do we do with nuclear waste? That's easy. Put it in Yucca Mountain. It's about, what if these things are untended? What if they're, the subject of a conventional or nuclear attack?
And you look at all the mismanagement.
Massive vulnerability. Why doesn't anyone mention that? Before we put nuclear power plants all over my country, which I think a lot of people are psyched to do because they want to get rich from AI, they should answer the question. That's really freaking scary, no?
Well, you have to also ask, why do they build so many here and in Japan, the plants right on fault lines? I mean, there's you see a lot of ineptitude in industry and things, so you don't want to have things that have potential to be so dangerous. And when coal creates carbon dioxide that transfers, and Earth used to have a lot higher carbon dioxide than it does now, it makes plants live longer, yields are up, it will green the planet, all the studies show it. We're actually terraforming the Earth to make it better. It's like God given. Actually, there's real studies, and you talk to real climatologist people, they'll tell you, no, it's great that we're bringing this old carbon back up and putting it back in the atmosphere. This is fabulous. More carbon is good. Carbon dioxide, oxygen, water, and sunlight are the 4 ingredients of life on this planet. The globalists created a way to tax and regulate one of the 4 pillars of life on this planet. It is good. I mean, they try to convince us that cows and methane is better. If you actually look at the carbon equation, it all turns right back to the gases it came from. It's a good gas. But again, if the cows are bad, well, what else releases methane? We do. We're the carbon that they want to reduce. They want to teach us to hate ourselves, teach us not to have a life force, and their new religion is they will give us all these indulgences and all these flagellations and all these things we have to do to atone for how bad we are to the priest class that is the big satanic ring church.
So the threat of nuclear war overhangs any conflict with a country that has nuclear weapons, of course. You push someone far enough, you don't know what could happen, and it could result in the extinction of humanity. So that's like the main fact. That's why people want to run, not to have nukes, right? Obviously. So with that in mind, what do you make of the repeated public statements by a bunch of European leaders, particularly Starmer, in the UK and the president of France, that they're ready to continue the war against Russia with their own feeble armies? That seems crazy to what is that actually about?
And they've said that now they're sending their troops, that if they get killed, then that's direct war with NATO. They admit that the EU population-wise is collapsing. Those they brought in, most of them 80% never even get jobs. All the different ministers, defense ministers, as you know, like you said, our business model is a 20-year war. They think they can continue that and somehow bankrupt Russia and break it up into 5 parts. They've made it existential for themselves, or made it existential for Russia. And you go back to the Pentagon assessment that was public, that 50% chance that if we start bombing, that's the West doing it, and the U.S. inside Russia, they will strike back the news. And then clarifying, well, we see alarms on Russia, we think we're sneaking attack, so we're going to have to go ahead and nuke you at that point. Please don't do that. So at least they limited to 4 or 5 big cruise missile attacks a day, and then maybe 100 drones a day going into major cities and attacking their nuclear bases, their nuclear bomber bases. I mean, extreme provocation, testing the line, and not playing Russian roulette where you have a 6-shot revolver and you put 1 .357 Magnum casing in, round in, but this is 3 out of 6. And they're like, well, that's a safe bet. Let's roll the dice, spin the cylinder, and then flick it to our head every day. It just goes to fundamental insanity that you see escalating. You go back to the...
But actual insanity, not, I don't know, will tariffs work, or whatever you could argue. But risking nuclear war? That's so fucking crazy that I really believe it's real.
That's a good point. They say Trump saying our surrender to these one-sided trade deals, which is totally true, would de-industrialize this and destroy our morale, and it's a huge national security issue. That he's rolling the dice there. No, it would be rolling the dice
with nuclear war? Again, I think you should be in prison for even having that. That's the craziest thing I can imagine.
Well, remember Biden just 2 years ago said we can't send F-16 naval tanks because that escalates the threat line, or the Rand Corporation. That's World War III. But they went ahead and did that. But they went to the bombing side. So the reason I went back to that, I'm glad you raised it, is the EU is refusing to end the war. They're trying to drag us into it fully. They're arresting their political opposition. Believe Georgescu in Romania. They're not letting him run the new election.
This is amazing, man. I just talked to him.
Amazing.
The day before yesterday.
And then Marine Le Pen, that is super popular in the head presidential polls, so they have to judge find her guilty from nothing and take her off the ballot. You have the State Department of Biden admittedly working in Brazil with Lula to take Bolsonaro off the ballot because he's popular, and then indict him. And they're talking about doing it in Hungary. They're talking about doing it in Poland. They said if AfD won, which they almost did, that the EU Commission might cancel that election. So the EU is really taken off the mask. And people that don't know, it was set up in 1956 as a steel deal, Treaty of Rome. And they got the nations over time to sign away their sovereignty to it.
I remember.
And an unelected commission with van der Leyen, up there running all of this. And she even came out on Monday and said, well, Trump's blown up the international order. He's defeated the New World Order. And she said, okay, we're going to go ahead and agree, at least in principle, to what Trump is saying. And that's because the trade is completely one-sided. So, again, Trump's move isn't just the move. It's perfect in that it's the only moves we have left for us and for global anybody that cares about self-preservation for the whole planet should be fully behind Trump's policies that are very popular around the world and are seen as sane. And again, the world, this huge alliance of nations, wants to join that team. And the good news is Trump's polls are the highest ever. I know the American people are understanding that and getting that. The concern is...
It is kind of crazy that his number... I'm getting, because I live in a rich people world for part of the year. I know a lot of rich people, and boy, they're really upset. And I share their instinctive concern about any chaos. My parents got divorced. I hate chaos, right? So I get that. But But from my perspective, I'll just admit it, like on my phone, it's like, I voted for Trump, what the hell's going on, you know? And I get it, I'm not, you know, criticizing anyone. But then his numbers go up.
Well, I like
It just shows you that you can, even I really make a big effort to, like, live in different places, know different people, not be a captive of my surroundings, not just live among rich people with like dumb rich people attitudes. Like, I really try to be bigger than that. And I always flatter myself that I succeed, but even I am, like, I guess, kind of captive to that. Because when I see the numbers, I'm like, people really like this. His numbers went up after the tariffs. That's correct, right?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Well, I like to talk to folks out there saying Trump is being destabilizer. The globalist order was collapsing by their own corruption and mismanagement and their alliance with China being double-crossed. And so that old order was already being collapsed by them. And Trump's coming in very pragmatically with a good, fair, freedom-based, meritocracy, competition-based system. But you know, to people that want to talk about destabilization, starting the war with Russia, total destabilization. Solving the borders, all the human smuggling, the fentanyl, total destabilization, engaging in all this overspending, and the country basically being bankrupt if we don't grow our way out of it, total destabilization. And then, wink, wink, the attempted assassinations of Trump. What do they think would have happened if Trump really would have gotten killed in Pennsylvania in July of last year, or 2 months later in Florida? If you look at the scenarios there, they run from bad to worse. So the real destabilization...
And bad for the people behind it. Like, clearly those assassinations were not only them and part of a much larger conspiracy, obviously. Everyone knows that. But those people behind those attempted murders would have been in bigger trouble had those murders succeeded, attempted murders succeeded, correct?
Absolutely, and if somebody's able to kill Trump now, we better hope he doesn't get struck by a bolt of lightning, because the bad guys will get blamed. And that's why so many people that have kind of been on the fence, the establishment, but we're working with the globalists, because that was the system, are enthusiastically joining Trump and Elon, because they understand that this is the only game in town for people that aren't delusional. But you have that megalomania.
I think that's
you have that megalomania historically when elites have never lost before and are losing, that they just continue to accelerate and intensify it. And I know you've covered this. A lot of you don't know that in August of 2020, I mentioned earlier, there was a big article in the New York Times with John Podesta covering a war game they just had, that if Trump was able to win, they were going to have blue states secede and blue cities secede, and then create civil unrest and civil war conditions. And then when they knew Trump was going to win, because the poll numbers were so incredible, a few months before the last election last year, Raskin, Carville, Podesta, all of them said civil war conditions. We're going to need to have uprisings. Carville said that. Trump's going to kill you. We got to rise up. Carville said, and others. And they are clearly escalating with the Tesla attacks, the swatting attacks, and the calls for violence. The 55% of the liberal Democrats in the study want Trump killed. They are embracing real terrorism, real domestic terrorism, and that's building towards what I believe is in the cards. Because you see the Democrat pundits and their operatives everywhere, before the election and after the last days or so, saying, once he got in office, Trump and Tom Homan are going to kill migrants. And when they do, there's going to be an uprising. And, well, Trump's not going to go mow down people at an illegal alien demonstration. You also have been saying Trump supporters are going to attack black people. Well, where would black people be alone in big numbers? A church, university. Trump supporters are going to kill black people. We know a lot of the globalist groups have been funding white supremacist groups and domestic terror groups, and basically run them historically. So the last piece of all the pre-programming I've seen is that to have these uprisings, we need something much bigger than George Floyd, much bigger than Jesse Smollett. And so I am predicting on the current trajectory of what they wargamed before and what they said, the final piece they need for this destabilization that they'll label a race-based civil war that will then crash the markets and be used, kind of like the predictive programming in the movie that came out last year, Civil War, to have a bunch of states, the main military, join them in a military operation to remove Trump. The Trumpian figure, and he was killed and executed inside the Oval Office. And so that's their dream, that's their backup plan. You have the two camps One camp is kind of the Chuck E. Schumer, completely evil, but isn't particularly publicly pushing that. We have his famous whirlwind coming after you speech.
But he's an old man.
Absolutely. So you have the Soros wing with Alexander Soros that more and more is in charge and is really making a run at escalating domestic unrest and terrorism, leading into some triggering event starting. Things are aligning for this summer. And I know that folks in the government, their patriots, are aware of that, but I think that the spokespersons and others need to really get ahead of all this calls for violence and not just repudiate it, but talk about the Democrat leadership and the talking heads that are pushing. I mean, you've seen Colbert just last week say, deep state, please, do something, stop Trump. And so that's where we are. So they want to expand war to try to take control of the agenda. They've been hyping a new virus being released to try to stop Trump's reboot of our economy because they think that would stop this populist revolution. In Europe, it's arresting the political opposition, stopping elections. And they also have Europe trying to sue Elon Musk with billion-dollar fines, trying to shut him down, like we saw with Brazil. So those are the strategies. They're also the big put options, taking shorts, trying to crash the market, and then blaming Trump's tariffs on that. So it's economic terrorism, build-up domestic terrorism, the false flags that we use, a nuclear false flag to get us into direct war with Russia, a new viral release. Those are the things they've got set up, ready to go, and that they've said before they would use to maintain control.
Everybody loves and appreciates first responders. When things go haywire, they're the ones who show up and make you safe, protect you, not just you, but the entire country. Most people agree they're heroes. But what happens if they can't show up? First responders cannot be everywhere all the time. And if there's an emergency, particularly a big emergency, there aren't enough to go around. So you have to be your own first responder. Before an ambulance arrives, before a doctor can help, it is up to you to protect yourself and your family. And if it's a medical emergency, you could be out of luck because you don't have the right medications. Most people do not have the medications they need at home. There's an answer to that. It's called the JACE case. It's a simple but smart solution to a problem most people don't even think about. It's a set of emergency prescriptive medications created by medical experts. You've got peace of mind knowing that no matter what happens, you are totally prepared. Even if you're a prepared kind of person with stuff stored in your cellar, you probably don't have the right medications. What if there's an infection or any kind of crisis and you don't have access to first responders? You're going to want a JACE case, medications on hand when they matter most. Go to jace.com and use code Tucker at checkout for a discount. JACE.com.
¿Qué?
Checkout code Tucker.
These days it's hard to find a good, reliable contractor, especially
Sí, boludo.
in my country. Call 5280 Exteriors for reliable windows and
Estoy harto ya de cosas de arquería, man.
5280 Exteriors specializes in products for this harsh, high-altitude climate, along with installation backed with warranties you can depend on. Call today for no interest and no payments for 24 months. That's no interest or payments until 2027. Visit 5280exteriors.com today. 5280 Exteriors, the altitude of quality.
First thing in countries that descend into darkness that happens is speech is controlled. There are political police who put people who speak out against the regime in jail, and that's happening in Brazil, as you know. It's happening in the UK. It's happening in Germany.
They're trying it in Canada.
It's definitely happening in Canada. And these were formerly free countries in Australia. And so the one place that it isn't going to happen right now is the United States because of the First Amendment. So how do you end First Amendment protections? Well, you pick off people like you, which they've been trying to do for over a decade. And, I happen to be, as I've told you many times in private, I happen to be on a fishing trip when I worked at Fox the night that you were taken off the air. And I thought it was like one of the greatest threats to speech in the United States I'd ever seen. I wasn't there, and Fox News prevented my fill-in host from defending you because Alex Jones is bad.
Nah, ya estoy llevando dos de esos, boludo. Siguen pa'l mierda.
But they need to end speech in the United States. They need to shut down.
No lleva nada, man.
And my guess is, and I hope I'm wrong,
No sirven para nada,
there
boludo.
is like legitimate hate and extremism on social media, to the point where it makes me uncomfortable. I'm thinking that maybe a lot of that is manufactured, actually. And that if there is a mass shooting, and God forbid, but if there is a mass shooting, of the people who've been targeted for hate actual hate, it's true, on social media, that will be used as a pretext to shut it down.
Absolutely. And
Empieza a sacar cosas,
Has this
boludo.
occurred to you?
Puta,
Yes.
boludo.
Because I see people on social media who I know for a fact, I think I know, are being funded by the very people they're attacking. It's like, what?
Mira,
Including one of the biggest voices. Like, I know that that's true. And so, like, what is this? And it's clearly preparatory to some sort of event that will shut down, a violent event that will be used as a pretext.
te voy a dar cosas que capaz que te sirvan, bolo.
no, that's where all the foundation's been laid. Actually, the superstructure has been built.
Yeah.
They're just putting the finishing touches on it. And so in a way, it's fortuitous that I'm here today, because you were here when I was talking to my lawyer right before we started taping. We got some really big news that in Connecticut, the Supreme Court said we're not even hearing your appeal now because it was so strong. The kangaroo show trial that I went through there a few years ago, where the judge had already found me guilty. Wouldn't let
Guilty of what? Of having an unauthorized opinion, of being mean or whatever? Those are all legal under the U.S. Constitution. Like, you cannot be punished for giving your opinion. I don't care how ugly other people think it is. And you've contested whether you even gave that opinion, but it doesn't matter. Under our system, you're allowed to say what you think, period.
Well, you're right, especially...
That's what the Bill of Rights is.
And we have the Supreme Court rulings with the New York Times Sullivan.
Insane.
And
Brandenburg versus Ohio. You have a right to your opinion.
And what they did was, with all these PR firms and massive thousands of articles, sometimes a month, and hundreds of TV programs a year, they built a straw man once I was censored off the internet the last 7 years. Still on my website, Infowars.com, still on some talk radio, but it was the remote thing. People had to go, get underground. They could then build a straw man of things I had supposedly done I never did. And then when I wasn't defended, other than people like you, it set the precedent to then come after everybody else, including President Trump, when he was taking off everything on January 6th. So people couldn't hear him saying, be peaceful, before, during,
I
and after.
defended black nationalists who hate whites. Obviously don't agree with them. I am white. So are my kids. Like, I reject their program. But they were indicted for giving their opinions. And, like, we cannot allow that. And now the ACLU is just completely captured. It's like a training organization. Nothing to do with free speech. Like, where are the people who will stand up for the foundational right that separates a free man from a slave, which is the right to say what you think? And why were they also they bask in shame for not defending you? I mean that.
Well, I have a major update. It's in the last 7 years of them suing me and this whole saga, we now have basically all the pieces of exactly what happened. I told you some about it last night. It would take a few minutes, but I could just give people a basic summation of what's happened.
Yeah, please.
But first, just an example of free speech. In Texas, there's famous cases where they take people's small children, because the school secretly convinces them with grant money, they get paid for it, public and private. A little boy's really a girl, a little girl's really a boy. Then the parents find out the school's been putting them in a database, giving them a social worker, sending them to special school times with peer pressure of other kids that have been put in the cult, forced sterilization, transhumanism. And then they take the person's child, saying it's abuse, when you argue, my son is really a boy, not a girl. Well, now Colorado in the House, as you know, just passed the bill. It's in the Senate, and they allowed no debate, saying that if a parent finds out their kid is being brainwashed and says, no, my son is a boy, my girl's a girl, that is abuse, and they're going to officially take your child. Other states have passed laws like Oregon and Washington. So you talk about free speech. This is beyond that. This is parental rights. This is everything. Now say parents can't argue and say to the state that has determined that your child's other sex, and then in places like New Jersey and other states, the hospital systems now have on the form when your child's born dozens of things, transgender, all these other names, gender queer, all these things, where the parents pick at birth what the baby's going to be and say this. So if the state wants to come and say they're another sex, that's okay. If parents don't like it, their kid gets taken in these areas. That's where this is going. It's already happening. But if the parents want to opt in, they can decide for their child. So as long as you decide that we're going to chemically and then medically sterilize surgically this portable person that's being put into this death cult, then it's okay. The only thing you're not allowed to say is no. I say no to this designation. So that's where Alex Jones having his speech massively attacked goes. So it's a long story, but here's the summation. I didn't understand, even though I know a lot of things, about politics in the world. I didn't understand how PR firms work, how law firms work, how the deep state was operating. And they later admitted, even on MSNBC, that a few years ago, we've been successful with Alex Jones. Next, we're going to do it with people like Tucker Carlson. And they mentioned you. So Hillary knows she's in trouble. 2 months before the election, 2016, she does a $20+ million ad buy talking about me and twisting what I had said about that event in Connecticut, that mass shooting. And in the ad, she says, Alex Jones is Trump's brain. This is the guy that Trump says is an amazing person. We'll be talking a lot. You're a great guy. And they show that clip. Trump on my show saying that. So they created a demonized version of me to attack Trump. Then that made me this huge demon with the left even more. Then for 2 years, articles every day, sometimes dozens a day, TV shows, programs, PBS, CNN, MSNBC, every channel, foreign news, Tokyo news, Russian news. It was being pushed over. Alex Jones is bullying kids, parents of dead kids. Alex Jones is sending people to pee on graves. None of that ever even happened, much less me. And then they sue me, and then they want all this discovery, and they say, who do you work for? Who's telling you what to do in the Republicans? In all these depositions. Of course, it wasn't there. So they hold me in default for saying I didn't give them my secret plan to get rich off these people that I barely ever even talked about. They put 22 minutes of evidence in the Texas show trial where I was found guilty by the judge, and the Connecticut show trial that were only a month apart in 2022, in the fall. So I go in, HBO's producing it, cameras, putting makeup on the judges. I'm given 20+ things I can't talk about. My lawyers are sanctioned if they try to raise that. Well, where did Alex Jones say this? Where did he do this? No evidence can be showed to counter them. They could just say whatever they wanted to. And then they have a $1.5 billion judgment in Connecticut. They have a $50 million judgment total, or $49 million in Texas, because I'm already found guilty. Then the judge tells them to say how guilty I am. They lie and totally exaggerate all the money I have, say I got it from these people with no evidence. And so I knew I was being railroaded for my speech. They said in the Connecticut trial and in the Texas show trial and on the courthouse steps, we don't want money from Mr. Jones. We want to shut him down. They said that in court filings. So I go into bankruptcy because I'm out of money personally. Never had all this money, they said, not even a fraction of it. And so for 3 years, I'm in bankruptcy. And they keep going and saying, we don't want money, we want him closed. The judge keeps saying, no, you have to actually, do a settlement with him, or we have to sell InfoWars.
This is all because you said something that other people said they were offended by?
Yes, but
how can you... I don't understand in a free country how other people being offended by what you say can have you destroyed by the state.
Well, it's more than that. They said I sent people to their houses, I peed on graves, all this stuff that nobody did.
Why weren't you arrested? You can't pee on a grave. Why weren't you arrested
in Connecticut?
Why weren't you arrested for peeing on the grave?
Out of the people that sued me, I only said the name of one of the people.
If you commit a crime, you should be criminally charged for it, and the state has to prove that you did it, at which point you're convicted and punished. If the state accuses you of something but doesn't charge you with it, they're fucking liars. Like, by definition, they don't, that's not on the list of options, that they can just discredit you, attack your character, destroy you. No. The state has one option. If you committed a crime, they charge you with the crime, and they prove you did the crime. It's that simple.
That's right, and I never got investigated for stalking or anything, because I did nothing.
For any crime.
So here's where it gets crazy. Here's what we've learned since they had the show trials.
I noticed none of the libertarians defended you either. Where was the Reason Foundation and Cato and all these supposedly freedom-minded nonprofits who are freaking liars? Like, none of them defended you that I know of.
Bare minimum, they were bought off, or they wanted to keep their head down. So here's what we learned. The Democratic Party and the Justice Department, the FBI and the CIA, this has come out in court, come out in documents now. We've got it all. I published it at InfoWars. They can be shut down literally in days now. We're finally to the wire today with this big ruling. But it's the truth's out there, but they don't want you to know it. So they come after me to demonize Trump. Then they run ads on Facebook and Twitter and everywhere for the 2 years before they sue me, 2017, 2018, saying I'm attacking him, saying I'm coming after him, using my name to raise money. Okay, it turns out hundreds of millions using my name. This is coming out. Saying I'm victimizing him, and then never showing what I supposedly did. Just, this man's hurting us, help us, help us. Then I was already taken off the internet after that for other reasons that they cooked up. They had Lester Holt get up on TV and say Alex Jones called for people to get battle rifles and go attack Democrats. No, I talked about them, the Antifa attacking your house, and how they were planning to attack more people's houses, and I said none of us are going to be violent, but I said everybody needs to have their battle rifle ready or their shotgun in their home if the left comes to kill you.
Well, as someone whose house was attacked by Antifa, I agree completely.
But then Holt never showed what I supposedly said. He just said straight up. Okay, so I wasn't even taken off the internet for Sandy Hook because I wasn't even known for that. Okay, barely ever talked about it. Then they sue me. Then they run more PR. Then they raise more money off of me. And then when they didn't find anything in their all their discoveries, there was nothing that I did. Then they had the judges both find me in default, coordinate for both trials to be held in a month and a half period in late 2022. And then right after they win, the jury's fined all this money. They come back and they say, that's not enough, Your Honor. We want 2.75 trillion. That's the GDP of India. People don't believe that. Type it. Alex Jones, Sandy Hook, 2.75 trillion. And so the judge said, no, you just get 1.5
In retrospect, did you ever think when they awarded judgment against you equivalent to the GDP of India, did you ever think, like, maybe I should keep my visions to myself and not, like, next time I see 9/11 coming, I just shouldn't say anything because people who predict the future accurately are always punished for it?
I think that's, what I realized was I've got something important to say, so I better say it even louder because the evil wants to shut down. But just to finish the key part, I'm told no.
You're making me upset.
No. I'm saying I haven't gotten to the big stuff. I'm just giving people the back.
This is not the country I grew up in at all. Just saying.
Well, no, you're right. Thank you for the platform. No, thank you for that. And I told you all this last night. It took 30 minutes. Let me just try to condense it. So I know they're trying to demonize me to get at Trump. I know they're trying to set the precedent to shut down everybody else. And once I'm demonized, they think nobody will defend me, and that sets the precedent. They admitted all that. Then when they win the show trial that was already fixed, these PR firms come out of New York and Connecticut and go, we've been doing this for years. We exposed Jones. We did this. We helped get this big win. Blah, blah, blah. Then this undercover video comes out that is in a predator sex team patrolling operation in D.C., which the guy was never implicated in, but that's how he got caught in patrolling operation. This Oblevis person, CIA and FBI, that's confirmed, says, well, we investigated Alex Jones for years at the FBI, even on the CIA. That's where he's currently. And he said we couldn't find anything criminal on him. So we went to the Sandy Hook people with law firms and we developed this plan with this narrative to take him down. And now, in the process of shutting him down, the person says, well, are you still trying to put him in prison? No. It's online. I've been FBI, CIA agent admits to running Sandy Hook, brain job of Alex Jones.
We recommend you take this moment to do what we're about to do, which is enjoy an ad.
Just to kind of refresh our baseline assumptions here, is the CIA allowed to destroy people in the United States for criticizing?
No, it's illegal.
Oh, it's illegal.
Of course, you're begging the question, but absolutely. So then we have that. But then I go, wait a minute. At the trial last year, they had this FBI agent who was the chief counsel.
Tengo que ver que me están llamando.
On the stand, they say, to hide it in plain view, the Democrat Party law firm talked to him for like a day. And he goes, so you went and got the suit against Mr. Jones? Yes, I went to your law firm, Mr. Koskov, and I went to the families, and I organized them to do this. So they're hiding in plain view the chief counsel.
¿Por qué me llama, man?
That I didn't even pick up on at the time. Why is he on the stand? I'm sitting there talking about how he went and set this up and did this. And then later we have Oblevis talking about years ago, we criminally investigated him for a decade, we couldn't find anything, so we went into this civil. So now that's two of them admitting it on the stand and an undercover video. Now this is where it gets wild. Then, 3 days after Trump's in office, we done a FOIA request 2 years ago for my FBI file. We've done it many times, they never responded back. As soon as Trump gets in, they send us a disc in the mail. I get a call from the FBI saying, hey, be sure you watch your mail. And they send me a disc of our FOIA, and it was 196 files, but it was just a cover sheet. It said the rest is national security, but it said, Alex Jones, the top national security threat. Obama administration ordered me to be a level 3 terror national security threat in 2013. I'd call Seraphinon, who knows how to read the code documents on the dozens of pages I got that were attached. He said probably the thousands, but 196 other investigation packets. And we're talking weekly and monthly meetings out of the Boston field office. And Trump didn't learn about this his first admin. So we learned this was going on until I was sent this by the new FBI director, okay, or the new FBI. And it's just the cover sheets, but they have codes on it that Kyle Seraphin used to run counterterrorism, the FBI, huge whistleblower, came on my show for hours and documented what it meant. Then he talked to his sources currently in D.C., and they said, yeah, we're actually on this, it's bad. Okay, so Obama illegally had me declared a national security threat, open criminal espionage investigation with huge resources, HUMET, attempted infiltration, that's all the codes. And that's now makes sense. People retired, trying to set us up, trying to get us to commit crimes, all this stuff over the years, hacking into our surveillance camera systems, trying to find something dirty, all sorts of sabotage. So now, I'm living in a spy movie. So we get that like 10 days into the Trump administration. 3 days in, they mail it. It comes to the mail like 7 days later. So now we have that. So we have Oblevus admitting it from the FBI and CIA. We have the other lead counsel in Connecticut admitting it on the stand. Proud of it. How do you blame you? Just because they knew it would come out. Then we get another FBI contact. They say, why don't you go look at the Federal Register and look for money going to these Sandy Hook foundations or the people that sued me. We go look. It's $4 million plus in payments to them right after they sue me, and then 2 payments to them during when both trials started. So
and
one
payments from who?
From the Justice Department.
So tax dollars?
Tax dollars, over $4 million from the Justice Department, were paid to the main Sandy Hook foundation that is on the board, at the head of it, for the people suing me that ran it.
This is crazy.
So now we have the Justice Department, and I'm releasing those documents. I was actually planning to release them today, a week ago, before you invited me out here. So that's all going to be out today, the documents, all of it, but it's online. They don't hide it. Also, millions and millions and millions more of COVID money went to them. And you know what happened to Cori Bush's husband. I'm not saying it's illegal. It should be looked into. So this is why this is important. This is the most open and shut, start to finish operation we've ever seen, with all this money directly from the Justice Department, admitting they initiated it undercover tapes with the CIA. Then you have the FBI admitting on the stand that they initiated it. Then you have the money directly from the Justice Department to them directly from their attack.
Oh, yeah.
It gets worse. In the last year, in my bankruptcy, before that, they attached the U.S. trustee, saying under federal law, to my bankruptcy, like I'm Enron. Most people don't have this happen. So there's Justice Department lawyers and agents at my depositions giving me U.S. code to read before the deposition. After I'm sworn in, that if I say anything incorrect, they're going to charge me with felonies. Okay? But I still don't take the offense. I've done nothing wrong, and I have accountants, and it's all lies. They're alleging I've stolen hundreds of millions of dollars from these people. None of that's true. I don't have hundreds of millions of dollars. I've never had $10 million of extra laying around.
You stole money from what people?
They just say, I harassed them, I made money off them, it's their money. It's just all made up. But I have the Justice Department there. So then the Justice Department has the U.S. trustee in May of last year order a private security company on a Friday evening to show up with guns on their sides and say, everybody out of the building. And I say, where's the court order? And I say, call the head of your security company. I get on the phone, he goes, hey, I'm telling the people this too. We got to have a court order. I'm going to tell them
They
no.
showed up at your office?
They showed up at my office.
With guns?
Armed security guns. And so I call my lawyers, don't even believe it's happening. We get a hearing, and the judge blocks it. He has a full evidentiary hearing, June 14th. Fires the U.S. trustee, removes them, removes the CRO that did it, okay, in the bankruptcy, and then appoints a new one who comes in to be all buddy-buddy. Then he says, okay, we want to sell it. And then that way proceeds are sold InfoWars. But then we have buyers that are good that will keep it going. The Sandy Hook family's with a different party. Says, we don't want money in court filings. We want it shut down. Because no, you will sell it at an auction. That's a cash auction. Then they have a auction date set. The day before they say, that's canceled. There'll be private bids turned in on that Monday. And then the next day, we will tell you who the winner is. Well, then it was the Bloomberg financing, his Everytown group, The Onion. Everybody heard The Onion had gotten InfoWars. Remember that? Back in November. So all that happened. So we countersued. The judge has hearings on December 9th and 10th. Says there was never an auction. It was fraudulent. You guys need to settle this, and you need to get money out. So Mr. Jones' buyers, it needs to stop. They come back to the judge 3 times and say, we don't want money. We don't ever want it sold. We want it shut down. So the judge said, about a month ago, he said, okay, I'm done. It's gone 3 years. Take it to state court. The state court is Judge Bellis, the show trial with HBO, That's Judge Ware Gamble in Texas. Judge, that's the other judge in Connecticut. So it's Judge Ware Gamble, just like Judge Bellis running the show trial, finding me guilty. She has said as soon as she gets that, she's going to send in the constables from the county and just close the doors, lock it. Because they don't want the money they can produce. They don't want any of that. They feel that they want it shut down.
Can I just ask you a reality-based question here? So all of this stems...
Sorry, this is a long story.
No. It's
Uy, ese
but I just don't want to lose the base.
And it's never been told...
el gorro este,
The
boludo.
baseline facts. Okay, so all of this stems from a school shooting in Connecticut
12 years ago.
12 years ago. And you suggested on air that there was something weird about this.
I covered other people saying that.
Correct. You did not commit the first shooting.
No. Adam Lanza did.
Adam Lanza did.
And I said for years I believe it happened before they sued me.
Right. So we spent approximately zero time and zero money as a country trying to figure out why would Adam Lanza murder all these children? We're all against murdering children. Some of us are against murdering all children, including in foreign countries and here in abortion clinics, just against murdering kids. Okay, so I'm not going to see the moral high ground on kids to rules like this. So, okay, but we have no idea why Adam Lanza is no one trying to find out. You instead are being blamed, or the father of 4 kids, for the murder of all these kids when you had literally nothing to do with the murder at all, and the actual murderer was probably brain fried and SSRIs or whatever the cause.
Ahí está, me dieron dos pasivas.
He was on SSRIs, like almost all of them. And exactly, and here's the phenomenon.
But like no one cares. It's like all these people jump up and down, including some of these parents, I assume. And like I understand they're upset their kids are murdered. I mean, I have true compassion for them. But they're blaming you for it?
And then raising money, hundreds of millions off my name. And his mother bought the gun legally. And then Remington was bankrupted by it, paid $73 million. Remember that? It just goes on and on. And after they sued me, this one foundation's increase while they were suing me during the show trials, 375%. Give the actual numbers, 337% to 119 million just during that period. And their main fundraiser was me. Not to mention all the Justice Department, 4+ million they got. But here's
blaming you when you say the fundraiser was you. They're blaming you for a mass murder that you're horrified by it being committed, and ignoring the actual mass murder, but the murder for political reasons. So like
they were just saying, it's like that meme where Indiana Jones moves the idol and puts the bag of sand on there. They removed Lanza and just put me on there. And it was, he's coming, he's harassing us, he made all this money off of us, he's bullying, he's sending the stalkers, he's attacking, help, 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 with just ads everywhere, help, help, help us find Alex Jones, help, help, help. And
Acá la cámara negra, acá
I talked
está.
about him in years and years, only talked about one of their names. I never even knew who this FBI agent was. None of my crew said his name. My lawyer got up and said, have you ever, Alex Jones ever said your name? No. Any of his crew ever said your name? No. You ever post your picture, ever talk about you? No. When's the first time you heard of Alex Jones? 2016. And then he goes and does all this, but here's the finale. Here's the finale. This is what, I know when you talk to Trump and others, this is important because this needs to be looked at. This is conspiracy against rights. We're getting ready to take action on this legally. This is violation of process. This is racketeering. But cut and dry in my view, and that's what my legal experts agree as well. It's cut and dry. Turns out Paul Weiss, the big law firm that lost its intelligence agency clearances because they targeted Trump and they admitted to it, they came to Trump a month ago. They said, give us back 50+% of our business. Let us have our national security clearance. We promise to stop doing lawfare against you and your supporters. This is an agreement. And we'll spend $40 million on pro bono work that's non-political. It's in the agreement, okay? That's by the way in our legal action is about to come out. They just filed that $40 million of that 20 is their suit of me. They list the lawyers.
That's their pro bono work?
And they've been coordinating the entire bankruptcy assault. They came up with the fake auction on record. That's come out in our depositions of them. We're suing them currently. The war's coming. They came up with the plan with the U.S. trustees multiple times to have fake auctions, and the judge said it was a fake auction. They're the ones that sent armed security in on Friday evening. I was leaving at like 7 o'clock. There's all these guys showing up from the security company we'd already used for 8 years. All these guys never seen. They're like, hey man, we're told that they're closed the doors, kicking you out for good tonight at 9. We shouldn't have told you this, but I knew all the guys. But now it's under the court. And then I get on the phone with the head of the security company, and he goes, listen, man, he goes, I got this lady, department official, Melissa Hazelton, and her lawyer, Freeman, Melissa Hazelton and Liz Freeman, and they're telling me we are Justice Department officials. you must close it. He said, no, I want to close it. So then I had to sleep up there because they tried to hire another security company the next day, and I knew it. And I want to
steal your office from you.
Listen, when they did the fake auction the next day, they came and turned the internet off because they knew I was going to appeal it, and the judge shut that down too.
Yo llego al nivel 48 y tengo que hacer unas cositas en el campamento.
The judge ordered to let us back in the building. We've been kicked out repeatedly. Once I was
of your own building,
of our own building. So the whole life has been running this whole